Okay, it's 3 minutes past 7, and I think we'll get started. Hello there, and welcome to this online panel event discussing the issues and challenges facing British freelancers working in Europe in the post-Brexit era. My name is Paul Carey Jones. I'm a freelance opera singer, and I'm also data and communications manager for Freelancers Make Theatre Work, who are hosting this event tonight. Freelancers Make Theatre Work is a largely voluntary organisation which aims to listen to, support and advocate for the issues facing the freelance theatre workforce in the UK. The work that we do with FMTW is all within the context of 10 core values, and we are also an anti-racist organisation, and we encourage you to examine and investigate those core values and that anti-racism statement within which we work via our website at freelancersmaketheatrework.com. Joining me this evening for this webinar are four of my favourite people in the entire show business industry, and more importantly, the campaigning work that we do as FMTW around Brexit and the challenges facing freelancers working in Europe in the post-Brexit era is almost entirely supported by the input, the feedback and reports that we receive from individual freelancers out there working and facing these issues and also solving the problems caused by them. Joining me tonight are four of the best. I'm going to introduce you to them one by one to start with. The English tenor Peter Hoare. His work has taken him across the world, far and wide, with appearances at many of Europe's leading opera houses over the last few years specifically. He has been working in Spain, Germany, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Romania. He was one of the first British singers to work in the EU in the earliest days of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the so-called Brexit deal, and since then has been at the forefront of reporting firsthand many of the issues of working internationally in the post-Brexit era. Peter, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Sorry.
You're very welcome, and that's exactly why we did that. So there we go.
Yeah.
Mastered the art of unmuting. There we go. Thanks, Peter. Fleur Snow is a stage director, pianist, and librettist who hails from the greatest land in the world,
Yorkshire.
Ceredigion in West Wales. Thank you, Peter. You can go back on mute now. Her work as a director and assistant director has taken her to Germany, Sweden, Belgium, Italy, and Switzerland, where she is currently resident staff director at Theatr St Gallen, from where she joins us tonight. Fleur, noswaith dda a chroeso.
Diolch. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to be here.
Bringing an agent's perspective to this conversation this evening is Sam Robinson, who is Associate Artist Manager at MWA Management, where he is responsible for managing the global careers of many of the world's leading singers, including Gerald Finley, Brindley Sherritt, Irene Therian, and Lisa Davidson. And in a previous incarnation, he was also my agent. So he's really run the gamut of experiences of singers from the most talented right down the way to me. So welcome, Sam. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, looking forward to this.
And last but very much not least, joining us is the freelance baritone Mark Stone, whose work has taken him across the globe and recently in Europe, specifically to Germany, Austria, Sweden, and Finland. Inspired by the challenges posed by the 90-180 Schengen area rule, we'll come to that in a minute. Mark is also the creator of a purpose-built spreadsheet to keep track of Schengen days and flag up when and where issues may occur. We'll be taking a closer look at that spreadsheet and how to use it a little later, but for the moment, Mark, good evening and welcome.
Hello.
So just a couple of words about how this will work technically this evening. You are very welcome to chip in with questions, and those will be via the Q&A function. The chat function on Zoom is disabled, I think, for attendees, but you can use the Q&A function. If you have a question at any point, there'll be a Q&A session towards the end of the event, but don't wait till then. If a question occurs to you even if you've got a question now, then please feel free to fire away. We'll be monitoring that Q&A chat throughout the evening, and I will put questions to the panelists as and when they arise and as and when they are relevant. Just to point out that the panelists are here tonight not as experts or legal authorities on these issues, but to share their individual experiences, which in all their cases really are at the forefront, as I've said, of the experiences of the direct experiences of these challenges facing freelance workers in Europe, not just in opera, as many of them are, or the theatre industry, but throughout the British freelance workforce. So I hope that's clear. Just a word on accessibility. If anyone has any accessibility or technical issues, or any other issues of any sort for any reason, then please do flag them up via the Q&A chat. Josie and Alistair from FMTW are both here as well. They'll be monitoring that, so we'll try and deal with those, and as they arise, and if they arise, and if you have any trouble for any reason using the Q&A function, then please do send us an email on hello@freelancers.maketheatrework.com. That will be monitored during the evening, so hopefully we will be able to deal with any issues as they arise. All right, let's get into this. Peter, I wanted to start with you, if I may, and I wanted to ask you specifically about your recent experiences in Belgium, where I believe you exceeded the 90 visa-free days allowed in the Schengen area. Dealing with that incurred a pretty hefty extra workload and financial cost. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Yeah, I was looking through a few of the documents that the Belgian consulate wanted me to fill in. It was actually the last 2 weeks of the contract that sent me over. It was the second time that this has happened in 1 year. The first time was in Baden-Baden in Southwest Germany. The second time was in Belgium. And on both occasions, the amount of administration to get through was quite daunting, really, especially as you said, the Belgian one. It can be done. Please don't despair. It can be done. These problems are not insurmountable, but they are a little bit of an Everest to climb if you're new at it, if you're first at it, and it does take a lot of patience, especially for an oldster like myself, who's grown up in this industry, just being able to flip backwards and forwards into Europe, and never a care. But it's, as I say, it is surmountable, so to speak. But it's especially in Belgium. I was working at La Monnaie, and we were doing the first opera of Wagner's Ring, which is Rheingold, as you all know. And I was running out of days because the shows were actually in the fortnight where I would have run out of 90 days. And so I'm lucky that I've got an extremely, and I'm sure Sam is an extremely helpful and on the money, wonderful kind of guy who's going to actually sort this out for people. I'm very lucky to have Mary Donald and Camilla Wemayer also, who are they're on the money as far as these are concerned, and so they had a lot of it sort of sorted out for me. But even so, it takes a lot of logistical and administrative patience to sort it out. And I say especially Belgium, because that's not because I'm being racist about Belgians. That's just that they are particularly not litigious. What's the word, Paul, I'm looking for? They dot all the I's and cross the T's more so than any other that I've dealt with. I've dealt with France and Germany, Spain and Belgium now. So and they are the ones. The list of things that they required was huge, but they're doable. But they do end up causing you, if you're unprepared or if you're new to it, I should imagine it would look rather daunting. You have to get, I've got the list here. May I read it? So of what you required, is that going to help, do you think?
Please do.
If I risk, this is the thing they send you. You can't see it, so I'll read it out. I had to submit the following documents: two completed and signed visa on web application forms, 4 ID photos meeting the ICAO standards, passport originals, passport and travel documents, passport and travel documents, bio page 2 copy, professional card copy. We'll come back to that. Original medical certificate by a medical practitioner approved by the Belgian embassy. And then a copy of that same certificate, a language selection form, decision of professional card, police certificate to make sure that you're not, Fleur's laughing away. Yeah, I had to do all this. So anyway, there's a couple more which I'll come to in a moment. So this is because we for one reason or another, it's not our fault, obviously, we are now a third country. Is that right, Paul?
For clarity, Peter, because I know there'll be people who will be querying this, perhaps, and going, but surely Belgium is a country where a visa is not required for short-term contracts. But but these problems arose because of this 9180 Schengen day rule, which, just to explain to anyone who, or attempt to explain to anyone who's not familiar with it, means that within any 180-day period, you can only work as a non-EU national within the Schengen area for 90 days of that 180-day period. Work or visit for leisure,
or
for
holiday, or anything.
All these things add up without a visa.
Without a visa.
And so once you're 90 out of 180 in any one, 90 days out of any 180-day period, once those days are up, you therefore have to, even if it's for a 2-day contract, have to go through all this rigmarole.
That's correct.
To achieve the visa. Yeah, great.
That's exactly correct. Yeah. So if your contract is only for, 90 days is 3 months, isn't it? So if your contract, usually opera contracts are 2 months, aren't there? There's like maybe 6 weeks rehearsal and then 2 weeks of performances or something like that. It's a 2-month job. But this went on a bit, and I had been working in Europe a lot, and so I'd run out of these days, as Paul has just said, and that's why I had to go through all this. And it takes a long time to do it. You've got to get your stuff together. You've got to get your A1 together. You've got to get your visa together. You've got to get all these documents together and all your ducks, so to speak, in a row. And even then, it takes months and months to do. Certainly in Belgium, it did anyway.
So these are considerable barriers in terms of time and expense.
Well, I was shocked how expensive it was, actually, Paul, because it was the end. I've got the where is it? No, that's not it. Yeah, the final cost was nearly £1,500.
And that's for, what was the length of the contract?
For the last 2 weeks of the contract, which were outside the 90 days, nearly £1,500. Because I mean, I've got to include travel in and out of London to go to these interviews, God knows what. The doctor's appointment was 250 quid on its own. Then there's payments to the Belgian embassies, there's getting the professional card, and all that. So it is doable, and it's £1,500 for a mature artiste is okay. But if you're a starting out guy, if you're a younger person who perhaps hasn't got a lot of cash on you at the beginning of your career, that could be insurmountable. That could be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Which was, forget my opinions of the stupidity of Brexit and everything like that. But that could be something that would prevent young, wonderful artists from actually earning a living, because they're immediately prevented from doing so because of the ridiculous cost of the outside of the visa.
Absolutely, that's a great
anyway.
point.
So that was my experience. It's still going on, by the way. Yeah, I've got to go back to Belgium to do this meeting. Oh God.
So that again is extra Schengen days, and those need to be kept track of.
Yeah, well, it's extra Schengen days to go and do the meeting for the local authority in Brussels.
Yeah.
And obviously, it won't be a hotel. It will just be a return, a day's return on Eurostar or what have you. And so it's another 200, 300, 400 pounds on Eurostar and travel, plus what have you. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the point is that these are all sort of drags on the trade process, if you like, that didn't exist pre-Brexit.
Absolutely, you would never. This, of course, it was. You know, you didn't need any of this to work in any of the Schengen area. Obviously, that's what was lost. But as I say, don't despair.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, we'll pick you up again on some of that, I think. Before I move on, Mark, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Can I just clarify something that you touched on then? You talked about the 90 days in 180-day period. Just be really pedantic and Belgian about it, as Peter would say. Actually, you can travel. You have the right to travel to a Schengen country for 90 days in 180 days. You don't have the right to work there unless there is a specific exemption. Now, lots of the countries have exemptions which equate to the 90 and 180 days for artists or sportsmen or academics. So there's lots of the countries where it is the same. But for example, Germany, you can only work for 90 days in a year under that exemption. So it's important just to clarify the difference between the traveling restrictions and the working restrictions, because they don't quite line up.
Absolutely, thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's a really valuable point to make, that this is on top of the question of whether you need a visa and or a work permit for that particular contract. Just to say at this point, because I forgot to say at the start, that we are focusing very much on visas, work permits, and the 9180-day rule in this event this evening, just because we're limited in time and scope. So there are other aspects of working in the EU, carnets, cabotage, customs charges, and so on. But we'll hopefully be addressing those in an event at some point in the future. Fleur, can I come to you? And as I understand it, you had similar issues with the 9180 rule, which came to a head while you were working in Palermo in Italy, as I understand.
Yes, I did. I had a very lucky year last year in that I was working in 7 different countries across the year, and I just about managed to make it fit within my days by alternating between the UK. So it was Germany, Wales, Germany, Sweden, Italy, Belgium, London, and then now Switzerland again, where I am very lucky and I have got my card, which is probably my most valued possession after going in and out of other countries before. But I was very careful, and it all came to a head in Palermo, which was a contract which came up 2 weeks before it was meant to start. They didn't have an assistant. Everything was going backwards and forwards. Could they find someone who spoke Italian, who was free, who they wanted? And so 2 weeks before I got the call, and I could just about make it work before my next contract, but I didn't have enough days. So the day I got the call, I wrote to the person or the people that I thought would know, which was the Italian consulate in London. Can I do this? I can see people are smiling. Can I do this job? Do I need a visa? What are the rules? Can I accept it? So first of all, there was no answer, probably because they were asking everybody that they knew, and probably freelancers who'd done it before, because what I found out during this whole process is nobody knows. Nobody has any idea, and everybody goes around in circles asking everybody else what you should do and what the rules are. So then I got a reply back in writing from the Italian consulate in London saying that absolutely you can go and work there because it's a short contract, and once you arrive, within 8 days of landing, you need to go and get a permesso di soggiorno, which, other people are going to be smiling, because for a 3-week contract, obviously, or 4-week contract, that is, you do not get a permesso di soggiorno, but that is what the consulate thought. So I turned up. I was having a really nice time. On my 7th day off, I went with all my papers, to the Questura, and first of all they wouldn't let me in through a wire fence in the middle of May in Sicily. They told me that this was not correct. Not only was I not allowed to work and it was illegal that I was allowed to work, I should turn around and go to the airport and go home, which was quite upsetting. And then, you know, argued back, more hand gestures coming out as the rage rose. And finally, after about 3 hours, they said I was allowed to stay in Sicily for 3 weeks, but I was not allowed to work and I should leave and go home. So this way, you know, begging through the fence. They took my papers away and didn't come back with them for a very long time, more hours sitting on this pavement in the sun and wondering what was going on. And then finally they said, okay, they would overlook it this time, but I could finish my contract, but they would not give me any paperwork that would mean that I hadn't overstayed my days. I had already talked to the Belgium company and they had said that they did not have the infrastructure or the time to be able to apply. And having heard about the Belgian paperwork, I can absolutely understand why they did not say that. But the deal with them was that I had to go on my days. Sweden had also said 2 months earlier, because it was a 59-day contract, we cannot sponsor you for a visa for this time, because if you have your days, we are not allowed to ask for a visa. And I tried to argue, what if I need my days later for something else? But in Sweden, I had to get to the end of my days before they would even start asking the question about whether I could get a visa, which means when you're doing 6-week projects back to back in different countries, it adds up because nobody wants to take on the responsibility of it being a problem. So then from Palermo, I didn't have my days, and Belgium, I didn't know what would happen if I overstayed. So I left before I left sort of last stage in orchestra, before I even saw it properly. I left before the end because I couldn't stay. Since then, I have found out, I was just thinking in terms of the consequences. I don't know what the consequences are if you overstay your days, but I found out someone I know in a country that I will not name, not working in theatre in any way, is working for some kind of government department where every 90 days they rewrite his name in the thing and he goes back, and he has not left Europe for, I think, 2 years, because if you know the right people, your days are automatically renewed. So I thought I'd just add that one into the mix. That was my experience in Palermo. Was
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you know, aside from the professional implications of it, of making you, you know, a bit of a, you know, of companies seeing you as a high maintenance, administratively speaking, booking. On a personal level, it puts you in an incredibly vulnerable position because, you know, that uncertainty, you turn up at the border and you don't know what's going to happen to you, whether you're going to get through, are you going to be turned back, are you going to be put in jail? That must be incredibly
it is. Even when I turned up in Switzerland with my official document invitation from the theatre, I got the last flight out that night and they took me into a room. Everybody else, all the lights in the airport were turned off by the time I came out, and I was there for 50 minutes while they went through all of my holidays and all of my contracts from the last 180 days, checking which day I had come in and come out of. And I thought it was amazing that they would go to this trouble at 11 p.m. at night, but they did. Also, one more thing on the subject of the A1, I have still not been paid for my job in Palermo, which was in April, because on the day that I wrote to the consulate, I also applied for my A1 form, and in Palermo they said they couldn't pay me until they had it, which was okay. So I kept ringing, and every time I got through to the A1 people, they said, there's no way to make your application urgent. There's no way to mark it as anything. So you just have to wait. And that, I think it was something like, it's nearly a year is the official deadline where they have to do something for it if you haven't had it by then. Then it got rejected for a reason, which I then sorted out, which means I have now, actually 2 days ago, I have just got, well, not here in Switzerland, I'm waiting for it to come here, my A1 form, and I'm now having to go back to Palermo and ask them if they will pay me my fee from April, if they are still allowed to. And they were very worried as it got later and later that legally they would not be allowed to pay me, and they were desperately trying. And that was a job that was, you know, each job pays for your next job or pays for the bit in between, and it didn't come, and then you just keep going, waiting for these thousands that will at some point appear, maybe.
I mean, that's especially true at the start of your career when you don't have those resources behind you. And just to throw something else into the mix. I mean, you're an incredible linguist. You're fluent in how many languages?
5. No,
5.
German.
So you know,
Yeah,
you've got that. You've at least got that skill set to engage with this process and to understand what's going on. Whereas again, a lot of British freelancers wouldn't be as proficient necessarily as you are in a local language. As you say, these contracts can come at about 2 weeks' notice or less. You know, that's equivalent as a jump in effectively, isn't it? So you know, it's not like you have 6 months to learn the language either. So you can find yourself in these incredibly vulnerable positions. And you know, those things are barriers to, you know, those jump-ins, those last-minute gigs can be hugely important at the start of careers in particular. Thank you, Fleur. Mark, you've got your hand up again. Can you want to
just to add my tuppence worth to what the consequences are? I believe that if you're caught overstaying your 90 days, then you can be banned from travelling to the Schengen area for 2 years.
I'm so glad you're here, Mark. It's like having an adult in the room. Thank you. No, thank you for that. That's great. Sam, I'm coming to you now. From an agent's perspective, when it comes to managing the work of British artists in Europe, has, from your experience, the administrative workload increased notably since January 2021, when the Trade and Cooperation Agreement came into force? And do you get the impression that European theatres are, compared to before that era, more reluctant now in any way or in any area to hire British artists because of that extra administrative burden?
Yeah, well, as an associate, this is kind of the stuff that I do every day. And I've seen the process from the beginning when I was working in an agency to now. Yes, short answer, it obviously has increased the administrative workload quite a lot. The most challenging thing about it is that once you acquire knowledge of how a visa system works in a particular country, you cannot rely on that knowledge for the following year or even perhaps 6 months down the line. You can't assume that the rules will still be the same. For example, I don't know how accurate my information is, but in a country like Germany, we always found that if you had someone that, say, was going to overstay the 90 days and they needed to go to Germany, say work in Munich, we never had a problem getting a Schengen visa, a Schengen C visa, which is like a standard visa for business, tourism, and that would mean that 90 days could then be extended. So you could work beyond 90 days in Schengen. The visa would be granted. I don't know if that was an error on the German consulate's part or whether that was really the rules. But in the last 6 months, 5 months or so, the consulate's completely changed its mind now. And if you do overstay, say if that contract in Munich means you're going to overstay your 90 days in Germany, they won't give you any visa at all, which has posed some issues for us, obviously, because you ask what visa you need from the embassy and they turn around and say, well, you can't have a C or a D visa. A D visa is like a working visa, which is traditionally the visa that they give you if you have a work permit, which the German house should apply on your behalf for. It's just a visa that requires a few more documents and a few extra steps, basically. And the consulate turn around and now say, actually, you can't have the D visa because it means you're going to overstay your Schengen quota. So good luck with that. As I feel that I should go back to what Peter said here, in that sometimes it can seem like helpless and you think, okay, well, they've said no, so that's it. But there are, in my whole experience, which I've not been doing it that many years, but I have done quite a lot of visas, I've never had a situation where there wasn't a way around it. We've never had a situation where someone couldn't go or couldn't take up a contract because of a visa issue. And solutions to that usually involved getting the house or the company involved, and they would write to the embassy or the consulate in their respective city, and then the consulates tend to talk to each other, and then they argue about what the rules are, and eventually they work it out. In this situation in Germany, they ended up getting I was quite lucky. I spoke to someone very helpful at the Deutsche Oper, and they sorted out an emergency appointment for them in Berlin on a D visa. I don't know how they did that. We have a similar situation at the moment with someone, and it's quite easy to be worried and think, oh God, they're not going to get a visa, they're not going to go. But it always works out. The second part of your question, have I noticed that British artists are less favoured? It depends on the contract. If it's for a large house, then no, we haven't noticed any. Well, I guess we wouldn't know the reasons, but we haven't noticed any reason of British artists getting less preference. But obviously, if you have a smaller company, and there is visa costs involved, not that companies pay visa costs, but if it looks like it's going to be more complicated, then they're probably less likely to approach British singers. So you don't know the work that you're missing out on, I suppose. But we haven't noticed it being a problem. But I think I think that the companies are so as ill-informed as we are, that they don't really know the problems that British artists face. So they, in a way, they haven't really noticed that it's much more difficult, apart from a few isolated incidents.
So the burden of that administrative workload is very much on the artist and their agent, if they're lucky enough to have a useful agent.
Yes, totally. Unless you're working with an artist that can sort of command a sway that the theatre is willing to negotiate on their behalf.
Yeah. So again, we're looking at a situation where, as you say, for artists at the level at which with whom you're working, those problems are not insurmountable, as you say. But if you think about artists, or we're not just talking about, let's remember, opera singers here, but we could be looking at freelancers working in other areas of theatre where they don't have an agent at all, and where their profile, their star, there's no such thing as a star name in those jobs, and yet in the pre-Brexit era, those are career paths that would have been available. So as you say, there's that work those problems can be overcome at a certain level, but there's then there's a hell of a workload on someone who doesn't have that backing. Could you, I mean, just off the top of my head, can you suggest any helpful hints to anyone in that situation, at the beginning of their career? What can they themselves do to keep track of this administrative workload, to be prepared for it when it hits them?
That's a difficult one. And well, in what I do, it's easy to say these things, and I don't want to. I mean, Fleur, you had such a difficult situation. I don't know if there's anything that could have really prepared you for that. But in what I do, I guess my job is to look ahead and plan a calendar. So the jobs are booked a year in advance, and I will very carefully check on the Visa Schengen calculator, which if anyone has never seen before, I would definitely urge you to have a look. Just type in Schengen visa calculator into Google, and it's a helpful tool in which you can put in the dates in which you enter the Schengen country and the dates in which you leave, and it adds them up all for you and then tells you you've got to leave on this date, or you can stay this many days longer.
We're going to look at Mark's spreadsheet in a minute, which does something quite similar, and hopefully will be informative for people to have a look at. But yeah, that's good advice.
Yes, it is really just about planning in advance and thinking about how long you've got to get a visa, but that doesn't really help you if you've got a contract coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
because you're very unlikely to get a visa turnaround in 2 weeks.
I mean, I guess another piece of advice is work on your languages, because that's going to, as we saw with Fleur, that's going to really help in that sort of dealing with that red tape.
Yes, and also be very, very persistent, I suppose. I mean, the sorting it out is my job, and if I don't get a reply from an embassy, I don't give up. You have to just keep emailing like every single day, I suppose, or calling every single day, because it's very easy to get ignored. And if I don't get an answer from an embassy, then I have to just call everyone. But it's just what you do, isn't it? You ask everyone you can, everyone for advice.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. That's great. Fleur.
I just wanted to say as well, as someone without an agent and having to do all these negotiations, something that I found then and have since been building on is that it's really important to be the person, even if you don't know, to say, this is possible, this can work, and just to keep, in a way, blagging through it, because everybody you're dealing with in a different department, from the finance department to the casting department, each one doesn't know. It's not like the house itself has an overall, this is our policy, this is what we do. And it's, you get hundreds of no's, this isn't possible from each level. Like, no, it's not possible to pay you at all if you haven't got your A1 by the time you leave here. No, it's not possible to book you at all if we don't know if you have your A1. And each time you just, even if you don't know fully, have an answer in official words from someone, you have to keep saying, yes, it is possible. Yes, you can pay me. Yes, you can do this. And in the end, they usually find a way. I hope we will see soon.
That's a really good point, and really does tally with the body of feedback that we've been getting from across Europe, in that the rules are not consistently applied, even when they are kind of clear on paper. Even talking about Germany, between different states in Germany, between different theatres in Germany, even between different people in different offices in the same theatre in Germany, there are different interpretations of those rules. So absolutely, I think that's a really, really important point to keep sort of hammering away. And just because one person says it isn't possible, don't assume it's not. Peter, was that a hand up or a finger up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that on this exact subject, and Fleur's absolutely right about that, that each of these countries within the Schengen area is its own sovereign state, and that's part of the reason why the rules they're mutable. They're not coherent, because the Schengen area is simply a trading cartel, isn't it? And so but each nation has its own border controls as far as third countries are concerned, and that's why this, I mean, I'm sure Mark will agree with that. That's why some of these rules are so different from Spain, from Italy, from wherever, because each nation is its own sovereign country.
Peter, you seem to be suggesting that countries can remain within the EU and still retain sovereignty.
Moi.
If only we'd known that.
I thought we said no politics.
Yes, no, we did. Okay.
No, but that's the point. It is, each nation is its own. They're control of their own borders. Anyway.
Well, you live and learn, the hard way most of the time, it seems. So, Mark, thank you for your patience. We're coming to you now, and I'm going to attempt something probably quite foolhardy, but I'm going to attempt to share my screen and road test your Schengen Day spreadsheet. But while I try and get that up and running and possibly fail, can I just say, if anyone does have a Q&A, I can't see anything in the Q&A at the moment. Perhaps there is something, but or it's been dealt with. But if people do have questions, then feel free to type them into the Q&A. If not, don't worry, we'll carry on. I've got plenty of questions that I want to put to the guys too. So, Mark, if you'd like to talk a bit about your experiences of working in Europe that led you to create this fabulous piece of kit.
Yeah, so really, as Sam said, there's a number of apps and tools that are available for free online that can monitor your 90 in 180 days test, if you will, for how long you can be in the Schengen area. So I wanted to incorporate that, but I also wanted to have a look at some of the other restrictions. So, for example, this 90 days in 12 months restriction for working in Germany under their cultural exemption. And also just to provide a directory so that you could look up exactly what the exemptions were in each country. So so you've downloaded this from my website, yeah, Paul?
Yes, could you remind us of your website address, please?
markstone.info.
Fabulous, thank you. And
sorry.
Just this is downloadable by anyone for free from your website on the resources tab.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just going to do a bit of Excel for Dummies thing. This is always enable editing. You can't do anything until you enable editing. There you are. That's my masterclass. Okay. So oh no. I knew that would happen. It didn't like that at all, did it? We're back. Okay.
Okay. Can you
see that?
Do you want to? Yeah, it's quite big. Do you want to maybe
quite
zoom?
Big.
Yeah. Do you want to zoom out a bit? Because
Oh, now you're asking. How do I do that? View.
Yeah.
I see. All right. Yeah, like this. So like.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad to see the aging process.
Oh, I'm all over
this.
I'm like Rishi Sunak.
So if you just go to the top left, there's sort of 3 steps in the instructions. So basically it says you go to the trip data sheet and enter your trips, and then before you click on that, you see the data. The second point of the instructions says that if data validation shows an error, then you've made a mistake, basically. So the yellow box beneath that where it says data validation just checks that the data you've entered is valid. And then the third thing, what does it say? To look up travel and work rules. Yes. So on the right, the green box on the right there, you can actually select a country of your choosing, and it will explain all the work rules specifically for opera, really, but actually a lot of those apply to performing arts in general.
Great. So can we do the trip data?
So yeah, put some. So that's my just dummy data that I put in there.
Great. So I'm gonna try and exceed. I'm going to type in something that's going to exceed. Yeah. So I've been to. I was doing Don Giovanni in Hanover. Wasn't I? This is your stuff.
No, it's not. I just made this up.
You just made this up. This is your sort of
my wish list.
Yeah. Inside. So I'm the very next day. I'm going to go for 3 months. That should do it, shouldn't it? Let's do it 3 months in a week.
It's be very embarrassing if it doesn't work.
Well, moment of truth. This is live theatre. Where shall I go? Oh, okay. So I've got a drop-down list. Where shall I go?
Yeah.
Let's go to Belgium.
Yeah, good one.
What am I going to do? I'm going to...
Botsec.
Oh, fabulous.
The description is just a memo for yourself, so you can write what you like there.
Is there a C in Botsec?
Not in the opera. Oh, the C, yes. No, so there's a C, yeah.
Does it, right?
Yeah.
This is definitely, that's definitely work. That's not pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So
now if you go back to the dashboard.
There's a big red thing.
Yeah. So there it tells you that the travel first exceeds your 90-day allowance in that period, from the 3rd of December to the 30th of May. And then it lists the relevant trips below that. You see the 3 trips that make up. So by the time it says basically you've hit 91 days. If you see the 3rd column there,
yeah,
the cumulative total for the days up until it may actually be be more than 91 days, but basically it stopped when it gets to 91 and says that's when we get when the computer says no.
Yeah, and so it doesn't solve the problem for you, but it gives you a very decent heads up of when the problem is going to occur and where it's going to be when it does, and so you can get ahead of the game. Yeah, fabulous. And
then there's a similar test that's on to the right of there. It tests the same data for the 90 days within 12 months in Germany, but that's as opposed to the ones on the left which kicked up the error. This only looks at your working days in Germany.
Okay. Right. Yes.
So it's a very specific German work.
That's the
test.
explanation there of why that is. That's great. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead or cut my losses and that's a really, that's a really useful tool. There are others available, as you say, but that's available for free from Mark's website. We will plug it. We'll share Mark's website address on our social media channels at the end of this event. No, I'm not going to save that because I made it up. And I'm back in the room. Fabulous. Thank you, Mark. That was a joy and very exciting. So let's have a look at we've got a question in the Q&As. So let's read this out and see where we get a case-specific question. I'm currently trying to apply to Sweden, which accept applications only via VFS Global. I cannot book an appointment since no appointment has been available. Contacted VFS, and the response is they are communicating with the embassy to increase availability. Meanwhile, I'm running out of time as some weeks are required for processing visas. I wonder if there might be any suggestions for me. Yeah.
Third-party outsourcing companies are the worst. VFS Global, BLS, they're all really annoying because they don't understand the rules either. They're just acting on orders basically and sending your application off to the relevant embassy. If you can't get an appointment through VFS, my advice would be to write to the Swedish embassy. I'm assuming that you're in London. If you're not, then your local Swedish embassy, and explain your situation. Write in your most formal and pleading tone that you possibly can. Say that without the visa, you will not be able to take up the work and therefore you'll lose the income. Really spell it out for them. And they might help, they might not. Or you can write to your employer in Sweden. That sometimes works. I know the Scandi countries operate slightly differently in my experience than the other Schengen countries. I've had experiences where no visa has been necessary, but there's been a work permit that they've applied for from the theatre for you that covers the Schengen period without a visa. And that's definitely the case in Denmark, Norway. Don't know about Sweden specifically. But yes, you can't really argue with VFS. If there aren't appointments on VFS, you can't make them create them. So you'll have to just try the embassy and be very persistent. But they usually appear. Usually appointments do appear. I've had to check every day, sometimes 3 times a day. You just have to check in the morning, check after lunch, check in the evening, because then they appear and someone takes them all straight away. So yeah, sorry about that. That's very difficult. You just have to be very, very persistent.
Thanks, Sam. That's great advice. And yeah, I think once again it sort of underlines the amount of extra work involved in any one of these situations. That extra work that now exists, and you know what a barrier that is. Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Sam. Do you know how much does I've never used these third parties for visas. Aren't they really expensive? And should we really be encouraging these sort of third party middlemen to sort these out? Do we have no choice but to use these sometimes, or?
Yes, usually you have no choice, unfortunately. Some countries you can apply to, it depends on the visa type. So sometimes the embassy will say, if you want to apply for a D visa, then you have to go through our third party VFS Global. But sometimes if it's for a specific type of visa, then they might say, oh, come to the embassy, do that. But yes, if there was a choice, then yes, I wouldn't use the third party. But then I wouldn't say, in my experience, they're any more expensive than embassies. I mean, off the top of my head, last time I did a visa for Denmark, that was something like 89 euros or something like that, equivalent of. So I mean, that's not cheap, but it's not like astronomically expensive. There's usually like another 20 euro administrative fee on top of that or something.
So what's that place in Wandsworth that I keep going to for visas, which I seem to I'm going to buy a second home there, I think, because I'm just there all the blood.
You come around my house. I'm just down
Yeah. What's
Seriously.
that? It's called TLS or something? Or
TLS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I can't remember which one's TLS now.
That's German, certainly German visas, and
yeah, is that Germany? Yeah.
Fleur, you got your hand up. You'd like to jump in?
Just I think sometimes I also tried VFS for different things and never ever managed to get an appointment by the time that I had to go. So either rejig things around with my days or said no to whatever it was. But at times when I have tried to contact embassies, I have not found them to be much more contactable than third party people. And more than once, maybe about 3 times, have resorted to, in the drop down lists at the beginning, press 3 if you're whatever. Every time you follow the correct channel for I'm trying to get a visa, I have a problem with the visa, can I talk to somebody? It takes you always back to you have to go to our website. So I don't know if it's a good thing to admit to or not, but now my default is to follow the menu through to a completely different place and then to talk to somebody to then get them to put me through to someone, because I don't trust that the system will let me get through if I actually say what I'm there for.
Thanks, Flo. Yeah, just to say that I've got a countdown on my screen, which is now down to 4.5 minutes. Nobody else seems to have it, and I don't know if it'll cut us off automatically when we get to 8 o'clock. If it does, I'm terribly sorry if that cuts anyone off mid-sentence, but we're going to carry on regardless, in the face of our own impending mortality.
do you mind if I just add something on the Swedish visa issue? Just because I had a situation last autumn where I had a job that was over 90 days, and I applied for my Swedish visa. I can't even remember how I did it now. And it didn't arrive in time for me to start the job. So eventually I ended up going to the embassy and getting a letter from them saying that I had been issued a visa and that I would collect it in Sweden when I got there as a work permit.
Right.
So I think if time's running out and you've done everything you can do in terms of applying for it, and you still haven't received your work permit, then there might be a way of getting some sort of validation before you travel.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's useful input there. Just looking at the Q&A here, David Edwards, but it looks like it's Elaine McCrill via David Edwards. On together, I assume. Appointments at the Japanese embassy refresh at midnight, which discovered accidentally on a chat site. Could it be that European ones have that quirk too? That sounds quite plausible. So I think, as Sam said, yeah, keep checking, keep refreshing. Don't assume that a final answer is that any answer is final, type of thing. Then we've got a couple of anonymous ones. When do you need a visa rather than a work permit? And what about the relationship between the rest of EU and Schengen area rework restrictions? I mean, that's a really complex one, which we probably don't quite have time to go into. But just, I think that the fundamental point there is that there's the 9180 rule. There's your visa and there's your work permit, and those are different things. Don't assume that just because one is sorted that the others are too. These are interconnected, but they're also separate. And so, it is, as I say, it's, we could do another hour on that in various countries at least, and only scratch the surface. So that's
the slightly interesting thing there, Paul, actually, is that there are 4 countries which aren't in Schengen in the EU. Exactly. One of which is Ireland, which for UK people doesn't pose any problems because they're in a common travel area with the UK. The other 3, one of which you've worked in, Romania, Peter, you get your 90 and 180 days is unique to Romania. So you can work 90 days in Schengen and then immediately go and work 90 days in Romania, and you're still within. I
was completely unaware of that. I didn't realise that at all.
You should have downloaded my website.
Yeah,
my spreadsheet.
I just want to add to what you said. The question about when you need a work visa and when people have got to understand that the EU is not now the EU for us. The EU is now 27, 28 different countries. that's it. And we've got to live with that now, until there's some kind of tier A Schengen visa, until something like that exists for artists to work in the Schengen area. Then it is 27 different countries. That's right, isn't it, Sam? That's it. They're all their own places.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All very different. Well, yeah, all different rules. Can never assume that they line up, unfortunately. I mean,
So
Italy recently changed their rules, so now you don't need a visa. You always needed a visa to go and work in Italy as a third country, and within the 90 days, obviously, and now you don't.
Yeah.
That's changed pretty recently.
Just jump in here. My countdown timer is on 20. We haven't done a Zoom webinar. This is the first time for us before. So this is a voyage into the unknown. If we do get cut off in 10 seconds, then you can always email us at hello@freelancersmaketheatrework.com with any questions you have, and we shall endeavour to answer them. Are we still here? We're still here. It's just reached 0 and it stopped. Oh, that was. Oh, I feel like when James Bond cuts the blue thing, blue or the red.
I thought it was like the proms going from BBC One to BBC Two there.
It was, yes.
No, it's that old movie, isn't it? Games, from back in the 80s. What was it called?
And now the shipping forecast. We've still got our participants as well. So this is great, because that means we're going to carry on just for a few minutes just to deal with these questions that are still in. Someone said you can usually log back onto the same meeting straight away. Yeah, but I think we'd probably lose all our attendees, which is we'd have a nice party, but it's great that we're all still here. Anyway, let's deal with these 2 remaining questions. This is for Peter. You had mentioned a card, and Fleur, you'd said it was your most valuable possession. Can you tell us more about these magical artifacts? Thanks, this is also useful.
Fleur, were you talking about the Belgian professional card?
No, I was not. I was talking about my now Swiss visa card of I'm allowed to be here for a year, which was through becoming Fest for a year and then being sponsored by the theatre, and 6 months of references and paperwork going backwards and forwards for Switzerland to officially allow me to be here for a year. So that is my card. I'm sorry, it's not my help.
Can I ask one question there? Because this is an interesting point, and I think it ties in with this distinction between Schengen and the EU. Switzerland, of course, is in the Schengen area, but not the EU. Now, having your permit to live in and work in Switzerland for a year, how does that affect your ability to work in other Schengen area countries and other EU and in EU member states? Does that mean you can work anywhere you want?
No, I actually have no idea. We just did a co-production we're doing it at the moment with Gärtnerplatz in Munich, and I was going backwards and forwards to rehearsals there, so I was about 4 weeks there and 4 weeks back in Switzerland.
That's great. Peter, what about your magic card? What does that do?
Was what's called a professional card, which is a piece of cardboard about so big with my picture on it, which nobody asked to see either in the theatre or at the border or anything. And it took months to get it. I still have no idea what the hell it does. Maybe it makes me go, maybe there's, like a first-class lavatory I can use somewhere. If I show the card like that and they let me in.
The executive washroom.
Yeah, it's the executive washroom. Well done. But I have no idea what it does. I really don't. It lasts for a year, so it takes me through to the second show I've got to do. I know I don't need another visa to go and do Siegfried next year. That's all I know.
Just dropping that in there. Well done.
Just a point on that. Having a residence card, or any kind of having a residence card for any Schengen country or EU country does not mean, say if you've got a residence card for Germany, even if it's permanent residence, that does not mean you can stay in Schengen over like another country for more than 90 days.
Yeah.
It's everything is different. So if you're from the US and you've got permanent residence in Germany, there are some countries like the Netherlands that will say, yes, fine, no visa needed, not a problem. But she might go to work in, say, France, and not be able to exceed her Schengen. So
Yeah.
I know in Germany, just having a residence permit does not mean that you are treated the same as an EU citizen.
It's almost as if they've got control of their borders, and that they are. It's uncanny, isn't it?
Amazing. Yeah, thank you, Peter.
I mean, Switzerland is the funniest of all of them, really, because Switzerland is the one that I understand least, because you can work in Switzerland for 8 days without any kind of documentation if you're a third country national. But above that, you need authorization no matter how long you're there for, above 8 days. And there's all kinds of, because of the cantons, the different areas of Switzerland, they have different rules as well. So yeah, that's a whole box of frogs, that one.
Yeah, there's always more to learn about these things, and you know, as we've said several times this evening, don't assume that anyone has all the answers or the categorical answers, because there's always another opinion. And I think that, you know, the essential point about, as you said, those residency visas or you know, long-term work permits or whatever is short of citizenship of an EU member state, then you mustn't assume that you've got the right to travel, although you may be pleasantly surprised. Let me just pick this one up. Hello, can you say what an A1 is? That's a really good question. I always pretend I know, but I don't really. Who wants to answer this?
An A1 is a form which, as a UK national, you would get so that when working in the EU, you won't have to pay the equivalent of their national insurance.
Okay. So
and basically, it's they're taking an extraordinarily long time to arrive now. I mean, like I think I've heard reports of 8 or 9 months. What you were saying, Fleur, seems to echo that. And you have to, some people, you can apply for them for specific jobs, but actually what you can also do is you can apply for them for multi countries, multi jobs, and that's what I would recommend that everyone does. So you can just write down, these are the countries that I'm going to work in, and you don't actually have to put down an address, although it asks for it, and that's sufficient.
Mark, you seem to be on the ball about this. So Fleur was saying that Palermo was refusing to pay her without this A1. Could they not have paid her and then she reclaim the national insurance or whatever it was?
Well, I don't want to argue with the Sicilian, but it's
a waste of time.
it's not healthy. If you don't have an A1 and you work in Germany, then they'll deduct their social security tax. That's my understanding. I mean, it may be that they're basically saying to Fleur, we'll deduct it and you won't be able to get it back. But I think there was a legal case about 25 years ago where someone took someone to court, or Equity took someone to court in Europe, and basically said you can backdate the payments, and so if you get an A1 later, you can then get the rebate on your social security payments.
But it doesn't seem to me, Mark, any reason why Fleur didn't get paid, and then when she got the A1, she could reclaim the local tax.
That would have been my understanding, although we both know that there's, you know, being paid in the same year in Italy is a result. So
yes, talking about learning things the hard way. One more question from the Q&A, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening because we've gone a little bit over, but I think it's been worth it. Which visa should freelancers apply for to work in France? I haven't yet read about D visas on the France visa website. Just trying to remember who's been working in France recently. Sam, you're up.
There is a very helpful, I mean, if you must have looked already on the French embassy website, there's a very helpful visa wizard that you can go through and plug in your specific details, your age and how long you're working there for, and it'll say whether you need a visa or not. But again, France is a tricky one because they are very reluctant to give you a visa if you're not working more than 90 days in France. They won't understand that you need a visa. So my advice, if you're staying for more than 90 days in France, it should be dead easy. And that should be, I mean, it should be a D visa or whatever the French embassy are calling their equivalent of a D visa. But short stay visas are quite difficult to get, and I've never got one. So if you need a visa for France, my advice is get a visa for something else and then stay in France on your days. But the French embassy website is pretty helpful. If you plug in your details, it should spit out the right answer.
That's great advice. Thanks, Sam. I think that's pretty much all we've got time for this evening. That's been really, I've enjoyed myself and I've learned a lot, which I was entirely expecting because you've been 4 fabulous guests. So just to say thank you to Peter Hoare, Fleur Snow, Sam Robinson and Mark Stone for your time tonight. Thank you for joining us. You can find out more about Freelancers Make Theatre Work, our aims and the work we do on our website, which is freelancersmaketheatrework.com. If you have any further questions, or if you particularly want to share your experiences of working in Europe or any other aspect of the freelance worker's life, then please do reach out to us via our social media channels, via our website, or via our email address, hello@freelancersmaketheatrework.com. On our website, you can also find details of how to support us if you'd like to feel you'd like to be able to support us financially. That would be very welcome. We try to make, our aim is to make all these events free at the point of access, so we survive through donations and financial support. If you'd also like to find out about getting involved, donating your time as a volunteer, there's details of that on the same page of the website. That's freelancersmaketheatrework.com. So it just remains for me to say thank you for joining us, and on behalf of Freelancers Make Theatre Work, thank you and good night.